Today we'll be using Inventor to create a 3D rendering of a puzzle cube piece. So on the screen is a puzzle cube piece similar to the ones you should have created using the prototyping cubes. And so we're going to try to use Inventor to create this. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into Inventor and I'm going to create a new part file. I want a standard IPT. And I'm going to create that. And then to actually make this, the first thing I have to do is make a two-dimensional sketch. So when I start off, if I come up here to the upper left-hand corner, I can choose this 2D sketch. And when I do that, it'll create this set of reference planes that I can use. I like to use the XY plane, so I'll just click on the XY plane to start my sketch. And for all of the puzzle cubes, since it's rectangular, cubic parts, we can use this rectangle tool. Now, if you just hover over the rectangle tool, it should, there it goes, should show you a help menu on how to use the tool. Underneath it is a drop down where you can get other similar tools. So lots of different ways of making a rectangle and then some other shapes as well. But for our purposes, just the 2-point rectangle is just going to work fine for us. Now, first thing we need to do, or the next thing we need to do, is decide what size rectangle do we need to make. So if we come back and look at this, the wood blocks we'll be using are 0.75 inches on a side, or 3/4 of an inch cubes. So each cube is going to be 0.75 inches. So we'll keep that in mind, and then we look at this and we can see that it's 3 cubes wide and 2 cubes deep, and then there's this nub that sticks off of it here. And we're going to start just by making this bottom part as one piece, and then we'll come in and add this hole, this cutout later, and we'll add this nub after that. So what we need then is one that's 3 blocks wide and 2 blocks deep. So I'm going to pick this, and I'm going to go ahead and just start right on the origin. It'll turn green when I'm on the origin, and then I'll have these 2 boxes where I can put in how big I want the rectangle to be. By hitting the tab on the keyboard, I can switch between the 2 boxes. If I happen to know, I want it to be 3 blocks wide. If I happen to know how long that is, I can type in that number. If I don't know, then I could get out a calculator and do the math to figure out how wide 3 blocks would be. But I can also have Inventor do the math. So I have 3 blocks, and each one of them is 0.75 inches. And so I'll just hit tab to go to the next box. And you'll see then that it created, it did the math and found that it needs to be 2.25 inches wide. And we've tabbed over to the height, or the depth, which will be 2 blocks deep. So I can do the same thing, 2 times 0.75. That, of course, will be 1.5. And I did something wrong. It should be 0.75. And there is our rectangle. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. Now, if you happen to have, I'll go ahead and show you the other way to do that. It's possible you could do this and maybe you type in the 2.25 and then you hit enter before you've done the height, or maybe you hit enter before you did either of the 2 dimensions. You can use here in the constrain panel the dimension tool, and I can click on this side and I can go ahead and say, hey, I didn't want that to be 2.45, I want that to be 1.5. And so we can dimension it that way as well. Once I have a cube here that's 2.25 and 1.5 tall, I can finish the sketch. Now, one thing we want to make sure it's fully constrained. And so all my lines should be blue if it's fully constrained. This one's constrained because I gave it a width of 2.25 and a height of 1.5, and I anchored it to origin. If I grab anything, I shouldn't be able to move it, and everything should be blue. All right, so since this is fully constrained, I'm going to finish the sketch. And I'm going to extrude it. Now, the main part of our block is only 1 block tall. And so I'm going to do the height of this. And I'm going to use this, what's called an extrusion tool. It's here in the Create panel. Again, if I hover over it, it'll explain what that tool does and how it works. You can press F1 for more help. So I'm going to click on that. It'll open up this options window. We know that one cube is 0.75, so I want it to be 0.75 tall here. And all these other options are fine. This set of options will change the direction that it extrudes. None of them really matter for this purpose. They all create basically the same thing. So I'm just going to hit OK, and there's my shape so far. Now I do need to carve out that hole that we saw right here. And so that is what I'm going to do next. To do that, I need another sketch. So I'll start sketch, and I'm going to click right on top of this object so that I'm going to be basically drawing right on the top of my shape. I'm going to create a rectangle here just in the middle. It doesn't really matter how big or where, because I can come in with the dimension tool and change it. So I know that hole is one block, a one block sized hole. So that'd be 0.75. And this would also be 0.75. It should be right up against this front edge. So I want to make sure that the distance, that it's actually touching the front of this object. In other words, I want the distance between the front of my object and the front of this drawing to be 0 inches. So that brings it right down there. And you'll notice some of my lines are black right now. It's because this shape is still not fully constrained. In other words, if I just grab it, I can move this around. So I don't want that. I want it to be fully constrained. And so I also need to make sure that it's centered up along this edge. And so I'm going to dimension this one more time in that constrained panel. I just, for some reason, it didn't work. So I just hit escape and I try again. And there we go. We've got it. I'm going to click right on that number, and that'll pull up this window where I can edit it and make that 0.75. Now it's all blue. It's fully constrained. And it's right where I want it. So I can finish the sketch. We're going to use the extrude tool again. This whole project, we're going to be basically using nothing but the extrude tool and the rectangle drawing tool. And when I click on it, though, it makes a nub. And I don't want a nub. I want to remove material. So we have 3 choices here in the center column of the extrude options. The top one is called join. That's what's selected right now. That adds material. The second one is cut. That's going to actually remove material. So if I click on that, it automatically changed the direction for me. So now it's in this direction, and it cut out the material instead of adding material. So I'm going to hit OK, and now we're getting pretty close to this shape. All I have to do is add this nub. So to do that, I'm going to start another sketch. I'm going to put it right on top. I'm going to make a rectangle. This time I'm going to, I have a nice place to anchor it, that corner right there. So I get that green dot, that means I'm going to anchor. And then I know that that nub needs to be 0.75. And then I'm going to tab to the other, 0.75, and tab again. And everything looks good. So I can hit enter. Everything's blue, so it's fully constrained. I'm going to finish this sketch. I'm going to extrude that shape again. 0.75 is already the right height to extrude it. It's going the correct direction. I wanted to add material. So everything here is okay. And this pretty well has the same shape as our example, but not the same color. So the last thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to give it a color. So up here at the very top of the window are some options to affect how your part appears. And so we will click on this, we'll get the green color, and then we'll choose click on the whole part if that will work. I might have to cover this again later. There we go. Get your part saved in a folder for the puzzle cube on your iDrive, and we are all done.